Are you recording? Great.
Awesome.
All right. You good?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
How's your eyes?
Oh, yeah, I have something in my eye there. Okay. Cool. Great.
Put your finger.
You really took it.
Not yet enough.
Yeah. It's
I was being precognitive.
you're doing it. It's all your fault. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 42-day program. Dustin Neese.
And Brian Osborne.
And today we're going to talk about why you want whatever it is that you want and do a deeper dive into that aspect of getting clear about what it is that you're going to create with your practice.
Right. So the first day was actually, choosing what you want. So
Right.
Now we're moving into why you want it, which is the second part of that, or the flip side of the coin, which is usually, we could say the flip side of the coin, but usually it's a pretty...
It's the bigger side.
It's the bigger side, yeah. It's the way deeper side. So
yeah, it expands and folds out into... Yeah.
And again, we're doing this relatively cursory, not that it won't have impact, but again, to do this, let's say from an original standpoint or an original form of this, it may take students months or at least weeks to really delve into why they want something. Sometimes to the end point that they don't really want it anymore. They've come to a point where they understand that it's not really something, why they wanted it wasn't really all that important, and they've come to some understanding within themselves that's driving them to want that in the first place. And when that becomes resolved, the want is no longer necessary. Knowing the why sort of eradicates the want. But on the other side, in order to really solidify, what it is and to sort of get that emotional feeling and that communication between the thought and the feeling, we need to look at, why we want something. So when we do that, we just start with that simple question, and you should literally ask yourself that question. Why do I want this thing that I've put down that I want?
And writing it out is different than thinking about it.
Right. Writing it out is different because I'm taking a thought process, even a question, and I'm physically manifesting it on a page. Now, it may sound, oh, that's very, superficial, trite, whatever, but it's not. It's like literally you have to look at the transition from a thought, which you're not really sure where it comes from or why it comes, and it's just there. You can't see it. You can't, we just have these thoughts. And then to actually be able to communicate it or fix it in a physical form by writing it out in language, whatever language, and putting it on a page, it's, there's so many times when people think things and then they sort of, if it just stays in that format of thought, we can convince ourselves out of it, or we can make all these excuses why not to do it, or make these irrational ideas of why we should do it, right? So it's on both sides of that. Once we physically put it into practice or write it out, we can look at that and say, oh my God, what was I thinking at the time? Or, that makes good sense. And I can't go back on it now and say, oh, I really meant this. So when I write it down and it's physically formed, I can read it again and go back to it and say, oh, maybe I need to adjust that a little bit, or that's spot on, and I'm going to go from there. And here's all of these indicators and different reasons why I want that, till I can get to the essence of why I want that thing that I'm putting out there as something to create for myself right now. or within the 42 days or whatever it is. And I have had times when people have done that exercise to such an extent, such a great extent, that writing down the why and really doing it well, that was enough to produce the result. Strange, not common, but it happens because they get so clear on why they want what they want and what is the, what's the core of that feeling. Because that's what, when you get something that you want, it produces a feeling in you, right? It's not the actual having the thing, it's the feeling that it produces, right? I mean, what's the difference between, one food versus another food or anything, one color versus another color? It makes me feel differently. Every different thing makes me feel differently, right? I can think about them intellectually differently, but it changes the feeling within me. So I'm really going after the feeling of what that creation produces for me. If it's wealth or finance, it gives me some sense of security or whatever. I may think of all of these things, but what does it do? Maybe it's not even security. Maybe it's self-worth, right? I feel like if I have the fancy car, I feel better about myself, and other people will feel better about me, or they'll think of me differently, or whatever. So it could be security. It could be feeling like you've taken care of your family in the best way that you can. There's all kinds of reasons, and everybody's may be different. And writing that out really gets to the core of that. And when you're at the core of it, it's going to be so much easier to produce, because that's going to be, the thought is the what do I want, but the emotional response of that is the why I want it. And that creates that feedback loop, that electromagnetic loop that goes through and produces that effect in the body. So I'm really trying to produce that feeling, because that's what's going to draw that event closer to me, or the things that I need to do in order to, to make that actual. So it's not a complex exercise, but it's not an easy exercise, because you're really going to have to be completely truthful and honest with yourself if you really want to get to the core of it. And the more you are, the better your results are going to be. In fact, I would go so far as to say your end results will be equal to how honest you are with why you want that thing.
And do you think that there's a level of persistence that's necessary, or kind of, you always say, like, you ask why, but then you ask why again and again, well, why that and why that and why that?
Yeah.
Can you just talk about that a little?
Sure. I mean, because eventually, initially we probably do it pretty superficially. I want it because, I want to be more secure or whatever. Well, why do you want to be more secure? You become like the little child, not in the psychological way, the child within, but like the little child that's annoying. Yeah. Why until it's like, because I said so. It's like, you don't want to get to that stage, but it's that idea, right? Of constantly seeing, is there something beyond that? Is there something deeper than that? Why?
And how do we know when enough is enough? How do you know when you get to the point where there isn't a deeper why?
Right. There is a sort of a visceral sensation, a feeling within you, a physical feeling within your body. Yes, an emotion. We can say an emotion, but an emotion really is a word that we use to indicate when a thought produces a physical feeling within us. Right? What's the emotion of love? What's the emotion of fear? Rapid breathing, pupils dilating, all of these things, they're physiological responses that produce a feeling. Rapid heartbeat, rapid breathing, fight or flight, things get more aggressive, more adrenaline pumped into the body makes you anxious and tight, and you're ready to spring into action, either to run away or to fight, right? So it's that what we label as a name, as an emotion, is really a visceral or a feeling sensation in our body. So there is a point when you get to the heart of that why, that you're going to have a feeling like that. I'm not saying it's going to be a fear feeling, but there's going to be some visceral sensation in the body, like almost like a sigh of relief, like, oh, usually it's a sort of a between almost a surprise, like I had no idea that's really why I wanted that. And that's why I say sometimes that's enough. Like if sometimes people will get to that point and they'll be like, I don't need that. And they'll go to something else. It's like there becomes this sort of resolution and a feeling of peace or a sense of peace in that just finding out why they want that and really knowing that in the core of their being, it's enough to sort of negate the want, So, but sometimes it's just like, yes, it's like they can get behind that feeling. And that's what, that's when I get that I'm going to have that feeling sustained. That's going to be, a real motivating factor for me. I can sustain that feeling for an extended period of time.
What would you say to somebody that says, I know what I want and I already have a strong emotional desire for that thing. I've got the feeling, yada, yada, yada. I've got that. I don't need to go through the why do I want it aspect because I already know, what it, the feeling. I already, I got it. I'm good.
Right.
What would you say to that?
I'd say bullshit. I'd say go through the exercise anyway. You may surprise yourself. Almost always surprise yourself.
I think I think that it's a good point to make here. Just that anytime somebody's has the response of, yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, that's easy. I got that. I've done that. Or oh, okay, yeah, I don't need to do that because, or insert reason.
Right.
Just what would you say to that?
I'd say go through the exercise anyway. If you truly have gone through that and that's under your belt and you've got it and it's cold for you, it's good, then you're going to realize that right away. You're going to realize that within the first couple times you do the exercise or the first time you do the exercise, like, I've got this, it's down, no problem. I'm never going to have to, I have it, like tying your shoe, right? So you don't have anxiety fits over tying your shoe anymore, right? So you put your shoes on and you go. You don't even think about it anymore. So if you have shoes that have laces, so it's like, but that's the whole idea, right? So that's fine if that's the case. If that's truly the case, my experience has shown me that that's almost never the case. And even people who have said that to me, and I know that they've done sometimes decades of practice, and they say, oh, I've done that, yeah, I've got that. And I say, tell me, your experience with that. And they will. And it sounds all good or whatever. And I'll say, well, do it, but focus on this point instead of how you're doing it. Really focus on this one point and see if it changes the results. And almost always, these people that have done it for decades and they're good with it and they've got it down, they come back and they go, I've never had an experience like that before. I've done this for decades and I've never had that, extreme an experience with this practice.
And in that case, or in similar ones, what are some of those subtleties?
It could be in the case that I'm talking about was just the timing of a certain breathing, keeping the cadence the same.
But with this exercise, you're saying
really asking yourself why and really being truthful. It's so, I find it amazing and not after this much time how many people have trouble with this part of the exercise because you could tell them like, I'm never going to read this. Personally, I'm never going to read this. Right. I mean, even if somebody wanted me to do it, I wouldn't do it just because there's no reason for me to do it. But and knowing that nobody else is going to read it, and you're the only one that's writing it and is ever going to read it. How many people have trouble actually writing it down truthfully? What they're really thinking, what they're really feeling about that. They have a horribly difficult time admitting to themselves, manifesting it physically from a thought that they can, it's so squirrely you can get away from it and push it aside and deflect it, to actually physically manifesting it on a page is extremely difficult to do. Whether it brings up, it's shame, it's uncomfortable, it's, painful, it's all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And so, Where on the opposite side, what you want is more like, oh, what am I gonna ask for?
Right.
It's like nobody has a problem with that, but finding out why you want that and really getting to the core of it, what's the essence of it, that can be quite a disturbing process. If you're really truthful, again, you need to understand, you have to want the truth more than you want to be right. Always. You have to want the truth more than you want to be right. And that's a key point. And so that will be a driving force through your whole practice, your whole life. You'd rather know the truth than be confirmed that you're right if you're not.
And what would you say to somebody who, in doing this exercise, finds themselves, looking at those reasons why and being, maybe hard on themselves about why they want that thing?
Sure.
Because I've had times where I've written out, why, and I've gotten to page 6, 7, 8, and I start to look at it and I go, Jesus, that's in my head,
Right.
Right. It can be. If anybody saw it, I would be embarrassed.
Of course.
So it's, and so, I don't know. Do you have can you speak to that?
I would say, again, one of the key points, which we're going to get to again in one of the other steps, right, is that, becoming non-judgmental. And of course, being non-judgmental, most people think of that as being non-judgmental toward others.
Right.
And it's infinitely more difficult to be non-judgmental of yourself. So, we try to cultivate that in every aspect. We try to go from a place of duality, a dimension of duality, to a place of unity, right? So, and in unity, it just is. It's not negative or positive. It's not good or bad. We leave that behind. It just is. And that's okay. When you actually have that experience, it tends to neutralize many of those feelings. But putting it down makes it so that you can't escape it. Makes it so that you can't deflect it or bury it so deep that it's going to come up at the worst possible time. Or it turns into even worse, some kind of infection, which we would call perversion, right? So it turns itself into something that's not good. It's purulent, So this is the idea in bringing it out and actually, facing it. It just gives you a deeper understanding of yourself. Again, over the Temple of Apollo is a warning and, statement, right? Know thyself in every aspect. Know thyself. To enter into these gates, you're going to come face to face with yourself. And in order to do this work in the most, in the highest level that it can be performed, that's critical.
And highest level meaning most effective.
Most effective.
Best results.
Best consistent results.
For yourself.
And then, of course, then you're able to have impact on others, right? I can only have impact on others to the extent that I can do it for myself, right? That's just the way it is. It makes sense, I hope, to most people. A lot of times in spirituality, people avoid this point and they immediately push people into almost a guilted sense of service. And it's like, look, if you're not good in any, in one way or another for you, how are you going to do anything for somebody else in that area? If your health is bad, how are you going to heal somebody else? If you're, financially not well, how are you going to give, in a way that's meaningful to someone else?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like you have to be good, and then when you are in that place, that your impact is going to be much more dramatic for those around you, whether it be your family or people outside of that, or just random people. That's the thing. It's as above, so below. It's the same thing with any physical thing here. It's like I can't sell your car. I can sell my car because I own my car, but I can't sell your car. I don't own it. So anything that I don't own for myself, I can't really, but until I own it, I can't get rid of it. Writing it down is owning it, right? Once I own it, then I can do whatever I want with it. And if that means understanding it and understanding the realization of where it came from, and how that came to be, or if I want to dissipate that or neutralize it in some way and turn it into something even more grand, that's fine. So it just depends on writing it down first, physically manifesting it so that you can't escape it. It's binding it in the best sense of the word. People talk about bindings and magic all the time. This is the first practical act of binding.
It's your first binding.
It's your first binding. There you go.
Here we go.
And you're going to do it to yourself.
Yeah. Congratulations.
You're holding your own toes to the fire. This is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's the best thing.
Yeah.
Do it for yourself first, and
It is.
then be able to, do for others.
Yeah.
So
It is very powerful.
yeah. So there you have it.
Okay. So just to reiterate, today's exercise is
It's going to be taking what you want, going to the next page in the journal, or right underneath it. It doesn't matter. Date it, put it down, and write out as much as you can, in as much detail as you feel you need to. But I would go, if you need to leave it and then come back to it a little bit later and look at it again and say, is there something, are there questions there? Are there things that I need to explore a little more? Go until you hit the essence of what it is, why you want this thing that you want. When you hit it, I guarantee you will have some sort of, I don't want to be too dramatic, revelation, whatever, but it's basically like you will get a visceral response of knots being released or some kind of sigh of relief or whatever. When you hit it, it's going to be like this opening up and expansion in some way. Physically, not just a mental thought, a physical release. When you hit it, you will know. You will know.
You'll feel
it. Yeah. You will feel it physically. And when you hit that, then you know, okay, there's the core. And that's what I'm going to focus on. And that's it. And then we'll move to the next.
Great. Thanks, guys. Good luck, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Good luck.